The rain had been falling for hours, turning the alley behind the Riverbend Hotel into a black mirror. Red and blue lights smeared across puddles, stretching and breaking as officers moved past them. The body lay just beyond the dumpster, half covered by a torn plastic sheet that did nothing to hide the fact that this wasn't an accident. It never was. Detective Elena Markovich arrived after midnight, coat collar turned up, notebook already open. She didn't need to ask what they had. The look on the uniforms' faces told her enough. Another one. Same pattern. Same silence hanging over the scene like a held breath. The victim was a man in his early 30s, clean-cut, dressed better than the neighborhood suggested. No wallet. No phone. No obvious signs of a struggle, which somehow made it worse. The medical examiner murmured preliminary findings, careful with words. Time of death within the last 2 hours. 'Cause consistent with the other cases. Elena's jaw tightened. 3 victims in 5 weeks. Different neighborhoods. Different lives. But the same ending. Across the Atlantic, tabloids would later call it a spree. Here, in this alley, it felt more deliberate than that. Personal. Controlled. Elena stood and scanned the scene again. The hotel's back entrance was locked, its security camera blinking red. She made a note. Cameras had a habit of failing when this killer was nearby. Or maybe people did. "Detective," a voice called out. She turned to see her partner, Marcus Hale, jogging toward her, rain slicking his hair flat. He held a folded printout in his hand, protected by a clear sleeve. "You're going to want to see this," he said. Inside the sleeve was a still image from a traffic camera 2 blocks away. Grainy, dark, but clear enough. A man crossing the street, head down, hands in his pockets. The timestamp put him there minutes before the estimated time of death. Elena studied the face. Average. Forgettable. The kind you'd lose in a crowd 5 seconds after passing it. "Run it," she said. "We already did," Marcus replied. Facial recognition flagged a possible match. "Name's Daniel Crow." Elena's eyes flicked up. "Possible?" 86% confidence. "Where is he now?" Marcus hesitated, just for a second. "We picked him up an hour ago." The interrogation room was small, windowless, and smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Daniel Crow sat at the metal table, hands folded neatly, posture calm. Too calm. He wore a gray jacket and jeans, nothing remarkable. His hair was damp, as if he'd been caught in the rain and hadn't bothered to dry it. Elena watched from behind the one-way glass for a moment before entering. She'd learned to trust first impressions, but never completely. Crow looked like someone who'd learned how to disappear in plain sight. She stepped inside, Marcus close behind her. "Daniel Crow," Elena began, taking a seat. "You know why you're here?" Crow nodded once. "You think I was near something bad?" "Near a murder," Marcus said bluntly. Crow didn't flinch. "I was walking home. I work nights." "Where?" Elena asked. "Warehouse on East Harbor. Inventory control." "Anyone see you leave?" Marcus pressed. Crow shrugged. "Shift ended at 10. People come and go." Elena leaned forward. "Daniel, 3 men have been killed in the last month. All within a mile of where you live. All at night. And we have you on camera near the latest scene." Crow met her gaze. His eyes were steady, almost curious. "Then you should charge me." The confidence in his voice was subtle, but it landed like a challenge. They questioned him for over an hour. Crow answered everything. Where he'd been. Where he was going. What he'd eaten. His story never changed. His timeline fit too well. No visible injuries. No weapons. No forensic hits in the system. His phone, retrieved from his apartment, showed nothing but routine messages and a few missed calls from an unknown number. Elena hated that part most. The unknown number. They ran his background while he waited. No priors. No violent history. A few traffic tickets. A quiet life that left little trace. The kind of man investigators learned not to trust, and yet couldn't legally touch. At 3:12 a.m., the lab called back. No DNA match. No fingerprints tying Crow to the scene. The security footage from the hotel? Corrupted. Again. Marcus rubbed his temples. We've got nothing solid. Elena stared at Crow through the glass. We have instinct. Instinct doesn't hold up in court, Marcus said softly. They went back in. Daniel, Elena said, keeping her tone even, you're free to go. For now. Crow stood, smoothing his jacket. He paused at the door and turned back. You should lock your doors tonight, he said. This city isn't as safe as people think. The door closed behind him with a final, hollow click. For a long moment, neither detective spoke. By morning, the city had moved on. Headlines were cautious. Another man found dead. Police investigating. No suspect named. But Elena didn't move on. She returned to the case files, spreading them across her desk. Victim profiles. Locations. Times. There it was again. A detail she'd noticed before but hadn't fully understood. Each victim had recently filed a complaint. Against different people. Different companies. Different circumstances. But all of them had accused someone of wrongdoing. Fraud. Assault. Blackmail. And every complaint had stalled. Elena cross-checked names. Dates. Then she froze. Daniel Crow's name appeared, not as a suspect, not as a victim, but as a witness. In 2 of the complaints. Present, but never central. Always nearby. Always dismissed. Her phone rang. It was the lab tech. Detective, I reran something you might want to see. Elena grabbed her coat. Back in the evidence room, the tech pulled up a magnified still from the traffic camera. Enhanced. Cleaned. Focused. On Crow's wrist, barely visible before, was a mark. Not a tattoo. Not a scar. A fresh indentation. The kind left by something recently removed. Elena knew the shape instantly. A zip tie. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus. Elena, he said, voice tight. You need to get to the Riverbend Hotel. Now. Why? They just opened a maintenance locker that was sealed after last night. Elena's stomach dropped. What did they find? A pause. Too long. Evidence, Marcus said. That puts Daniel Crow back in that room. And suddenly, the words echoed louder than the sirens ever had. They had the killer in the room. And they had let him go. By the time Elena reached the Riverbend Hotel, dawn was bleeding into the sky, washing the city in a pale, indifferent light. The alley was gone, cleaned, reopened, already forgetting. But inside the hotel's lower level, memory lingered. The maintenance locker sat at the end of a narrow corridor beneath the stairwell. Its metal door had been forced open, the lock snapped clean. Inside, officers had marked the floor with evidence flags, yellow numbers standing like accusations. Elena stepped carefully, her eyes cataloging everything at once. A pair of disposable gloves. A folded plastic sheet identical to the one found near the body. And, taped to the inside wall, a handwritten note sealed in clear evidence wrap. Marcus stood beside it, arms crossed, face tight. That locker was logged as sealed after the crime scene sweep. No one was supposed to access it. Elena read the note without touching it. You were supposed to listen. No signature. No flourish. Just 4 words written with deliberate pressure, the pen biting into the paper. This wasn't left by the victim, Elena said. It's for us. The lab confirmed it an hour later. The gloves carried partial prints. Not enough for a full match, but enough to narrow the field. The plastic sheet held fibers consistent with those found at the previous scenes. And the tape? Store-bought. Common. Anonymous. The problem wasn't what they had found. It was what they hadn't. "Where's the zip tie?" Elena asked. Marcus frowned. "What zip tie?" "The indentation on his wrist," she said. "The one we saw in the footage. There should be something here." They searched again. Nothing. By noon, word came down from the prosecutor's office. Without direct physical evidence tying Crow to the murder, there was no warrant. No pickup. Not yet. Elena felt the clock start ticking the moment she heard that. She went back to her office and pulled Crow's file from the cabinet, flipping through pages she already knew by heart. Warehouse job. Night shifts. No close family. Minimal social footprint. And those complaints, 2 of them, where his name appeared as a witness. She called the first complainant's attorney. Straight to voicemail. The second? Disconnected. Elena slammed the phone down harder than she meant to. "He's cleaning up," she muttered. Marcus leaned against the doorway. "We don't even know if Crow knows we're onto him." "Yes, he does," Elena said. "He warned me to lock my doors." They traced the unknown number on Crow's phone next. It led to a prepaid burner, activated 6 weeks earlier. The same week the first victim had been killed. A pattern was forming, but it was fragile. The kind that collapsed if you breathed on it wrong. That afternoon, a patrol officer radioed in from East Harbor. "Crow's warehouse." "He didn't show for his shift," the officer said. "Supervisor says that never happens." Elena felt the tension coil tighter. When was he last seen? Security camera caught him leaving his apartment at 9:18 this morning. Heading where? No one knew. They canvassed his building again, knocking on doors, asking the same questions. Most neighbors barely remembered him. Quiet guy. Kept to himself. Polite. One woman hesitated before answering. "He asked me something once," she said, lowering her voice. "About whether I believed people ever really paid for what they did." Elena's pen paused. "When was this?" "A few weeks ago." "I thought it was just conversation." "What did you say?" "That I hoped they did." The woman swallowed. He smiled. Like I'd told him a joke. By evening, the pressure was mounting. Media vans had parked across the street from the precinct. Reporters spoke in urgent tones, repeating the same lines. Police questioned suspect. Suspect released. New evidence discovered. Marcus watched one broadcast on mute. "They're circling." "They should be," Elena said. "So should we." They got their break just after sunset. A financial analyst from the fraud division flagged something odd. All 3 victims had transferred small amounts of money, nothing suspicious on its own, to the same shell account weeks before their deaths. The account had since been emptied and closed. Elena traced the shell company's registration. The name on the paperwork meant nothing. The address led to a rented mailbox. But the IP address used to set it up? It came from a public library. The same library appeared again when they traced a second shell account connected to the burner phone. Same place. Same terminal. Different dates. Elena pulled up the library's security footage. Grainy, but familiar. Daniel Crow sat at a computer, hood up, head down. "He's been planning this," Marcus said quietly. "Longer than we thought." They requested a warrant. This time, the judge approved it. Crow's apartment was clean to the point of sterility. No photos. No decorations. Bare walls. A mattress on the floor. A single chair by the window. But in the bathroom cabinet, behind a false panel, they found a small notebook. Elena flipped it open. Inside were names. Dates. Short notes. Some crossed out. Some circled. 3 names were marked with a single line through them. 3 victims. Below them were others. Too many. This isn't over, Marcus said. Elena nodded. It was never just 3. As they bagged the evidence, a call came in from dispatch. Another body. This one was different. Suburban. A woman in her 40s. Found in her garage, car still warm. No forced entry. Elena felt something twist in her chest. Any connection? Not yet, the dispatcher replied. But, she filed a complaint last month. Workplace harassment. Case was dropped. Elena closed her eyes. They arrived to find a scene eerily calm. No mess. No sign of struggle. Just a life interrupted. In the corner of the garage, taped to a storage shelf, was a note. You were supposed to listen. Marcus swore under his breath. He's accelerating. And he's mocking us, Elena said. He knows we're watching. They put out an alert. Crow was now officially wanted for questioning in connection with multiple homicides. His face was everywhere. Too late. At 2:07 a.m., Elena's phone rang again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. A man's voice came through, calm, almost gentle. Detective Markovich. Her blood went cold. Daniel. I told you to lock your doors, Crow said. I hope you listened. Where are you? Elena demanded. Closer than you think, he replied. You're looking in the wrong direction. The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone, heart pounding. Outside, sirens wailed. Somewhere in the city, Daniel Crow was still moving. And this time, he wasn't running. The city didn't sleep that night. Helicopters cut slow circles through the clouds. Patrol cars prowled streets that suddenly felt exposed, every shadow suspicious, every quiet stretch too quiet. Daniel Crow's face stared out from screens in bars, living rooms, police cruisers. Wanted. Dangerous. Armed with patience. Elena hadn't gone home. She stood in the operations room, staring at a map littered with pins and marker lines. Victims. Witness locations. Libraries. Warehouses. Hotels. On the surface, it looked chaotic. But Crow hadn't been chaotic. He was precise. Closer than you think, he'd said. Elena replayed the call again in her head. Not the words, the tone. Calm. Almost reassuring. He hadn't sounded like a man on the run. He'd sounded like someone already where he needed to be. Marcus paced behind her. We've got units checking his known spots again. Known spots, Elena echoed. That's the problem. She stared at the map until her eyes burned, then suddenly reached up and pulled one pin free. The Riverbend Hotel. Why take it out? Marcus asked. Because he was already done there, she said. Crow doesn't revisit places unless there's something unfinished. She grabbed a marker and circled the precinct itself. Marcus stopped pacing. You think? He knew our names. He knew my number. That means proximity. Access. The room went quiet. They pulled Crow's file up again, this time not as a suspect, but as a presence. Where he'd been allowed to go. Where no one had looked twice. And then it clicked. 2 years ago, before Elena had transferred in, Crow had worked briefly as a contracted cleaner. Night shifts. Temporary badge. Access to offices, evidence storage corridors, interview rooms. Including interrogation rooms. Elena felt a chill run through her. He didn't just sit in that room, she said slowly. He studied it. They moved fast. The building was already on alert, but panic doesn't announce itself, it hides in routine. Elena and Marcus took the stairs, bypassing elevators, their footsteps echoing. Halfway down to the lower level, Elena stopped. Listen, she whispered. A faint sound drifted up from below. Metal. A soft scrape. They drew their weapons and moved. The old records wing had been scheduled for renovation and was mostly unused. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. At the far end of the corridor was a door Elena had passed 100 times without thinking about it. Records overflow, authorized personnel only. Marcus reached for the handle. Locked. Elena kicked it. The door burst inward. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a single desk lamp. File boxes were stacked high, some open, papers spilling out. And in the center of the room, a woman was tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. Behind her stood Daniel Crow. He didn't raise his hands. He smiled. "Detective," he said calmly. "You found me." Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. "Step away from her. Now." Crow tilted his head, considering. "You know, this would have gone so much cleaner if you hadn't noticed the wrist." Marcus moved to flank him. "It's over." Crow laughed softly. "That's what they all think." He stepped back, not toward an exit, but toward a metal shelving unit. With one hand, he knocked it aside. A door was hidden behind it. Elena's eyes flicked to the bound woman. She recognized her now. An internal affairs investigator. One of the people who'd quietly buried complaints when evidence was thin and pressure was high. Crow saw the recognition on Elena's face and nodded. "She decides which voices matter," he said. "Or used to." "Daniel," Elena said, forcing steadiness into her voice, "you're not fixing anything." He shrugged. "I'm balancing it." Sirens wailed closer now. Backup was coming. Crow glanced toward the sound, then back at Elena. "You let me go once. That was your mistake." "No," Elena said. "Ours was not seeing you for what you are." Crow's smile faded. "No," he corrected softly. "Your mistake was thinking this ends with me." He lunged. Marcus fired. The shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. Crow stumbled, hit in the shoulder, crashing into the shelf. Elena moved instantly, cutting the hostage free as Crow collapsed to his knees. Blood pooled on the floor, dark and spreading. Officers flooded the room seconds later, weapons raised, shouting commands. Crow no longer resisted. He was cuffed, slumped, pale. As they dragged him past her, Crow met Elena's eyes one last time. "You'll keep looking," he said weakly. "That's the worst part." They took him away. The woman survived. Crow didn't die. The city exhaled. In the weeks that followed, the case exploded. The notebook. The shell accounts. The hidden access routes. Crow had targeted people who had abused power quietly, people protected by systems too slow or too cautious to act. He had watched cases fall apart, victims ignored, consequences delayed until they never came. So he decided to become the consequence. The media argued about him endlessly. Monster. Vigilante. Product of institutional failure. Elena didn't argue. She sat in the interview room again one night, across from Crow, glass between them this time. "Why the note?" she asked. "Why leave it behind?" Crow's eyes were tired now. Hollow. "Because you were supposed to hear them," he said. "All of them." He was convicted months later. Multiple life sentences. No parole. The city moved on. New headlines. New fears. But Elena didn't stop thinking about the names in the notebook. Some were crossed out. Some weren't. 3 months after Crow was transferred to a maximum security facility, a body was found in a parking structure across town. A man in his 50s. Former executive. Sexual misconduct complaints. Settled quietly. Forgotten publicly. Taped to the concrete pillar beside him was a familiar note. "You were supposed to listen." Crow was behind bars. The signature was the same. Elena stood at the scene, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. They had caught the killer. They had locked him away. And somewhere along the way, they had missed the most dangerous possibility of all. That he had never been alone. If this story pulled you in, stay close. Because the next one doesn't start with a mistake. It starts with a warning.